Well, welcome back to this week's edition of Weekly Wrap-Up. Thank you so much for joining me. It's another week has come and gone. It does happen so quickly, doesn't it? So much going on every day, and that's why I love our business, our trading business, in that you can put one week behind you and then look forward to what's going to be happening in this coming week and what opportunities will be given to you. So, like I said, thanks for joining me. This last week, well, it was all about the Dow on Friday. The Dow had a great day on Friday. The S&P and the NASDAQ, on the other hand, had a losing day on Friday. Now, the Dow at one point was up over 400 points. Now, it did come back down a bit, but it still did finish at a record close, up over 100 points. So we'll see if that can continue. But like I said, the NASDAQ and the S&P had a down day on Friday. Now, all three indexes had the third week in the row of gains, which is really good news. One of that reason is because, of course, inflationary reports that we've heard of all this last month, as well as the interest rates, very positive news. The PCE, the Personal Consumption Index, that was released this last week, had a increase of 0.1%. Not a lot, but it is an inflationary report that is highly respected and watched for. So that was certainly came into play this last week. But let me get back to this last Friday, whereas the S&P and the NASDAQ both were down for the day. And the big reason for that was NVIDIA. NVIDIA is a U.S. chip maker. Probably heard of it. It seems to be the darling of the Magnificent Seven NASDAQ tech stocks. And so like I said, it's a chip maker. So it's been really on a roll here lately, had great earnings, but it was down 15% on Friday. The reason being is that China had a lot of economic news this last week, or a lot of talk, I should say, a lot of economic support initiatives that they were going to be enacting. And one thing that was spoken of is their chip manufacturers there locally. And they were implored or asked to use local chip makers, which of course NVIDIA lost some ground there. So that was the reason for their coming down on Friday. So also want to mention earnings. Now Costco, I think I mentioned this last week, I was watching the Costco earning report because it was expected to beat expectations, which it did indeed beat. However, it gapped down that day and it continued to go lower by about 15 points, I believe. So just an FYI to you, in that when you're watching for option trading, which I do, be aware of how those reports are issued. If it beats expectations, that certainly doesn't mean that the stock is going to continue beating your expectations. So just be aware of that. So let's get to our charts. In front of you here, this is the Dow. I did want to show you a few things that I have been looking at on the Dow. This is on the daily chart. And like I mentioned, they did meet their all-time high record on the futures chart, at least over 43,000. A huge mark. All those 1,000-point markers are very big, very watched at. And so it kind of played with that level, but then it certainly, like I said, it did retrace. But what we're watching for here on this chart is a couple of things. First, I have a trend line. Now we know that 3 touches validates that trend line, which we did have, so we'll see if that trend line continues to come into play on possibly a reversal. We are also looking at a Fibonacci retracement, which I have from this swing low to the swing high here. Now it did come back to that 50% level, which is also huge. It didn't go below that, so we felt that trend up was going to continue. Also, the top of that swing low, if you look left, which I always tell you to do, there was some support here, and then it hit that resistance level. The resistance here, it hit that resistance level, came down to 50%, and then it continued and bypassed that. So now the question is, if it does come back down, is that support going to become, or that's the resistance going to become support? I always get those mixed up. But I think you know what I mean, because we have had this level here, which kind of hung around right at about the 41.5 mark. So we'll see if that holds. The next thing I want to point out to you, I have it written here, is shooting star. Friday, it has a really really important pattern, and that's a shooting star pattern, and that is often found at the top of a trend, and it is a reversal pattern, meaning that if we have a close below that, we will certainly be coming back down again. So you do want to watch those shooting stars. Shooting stars will open up strong, but then it'll continue higher, which it certainly did, but then come back and just have a small body and a very large wick or shadow. So really be looking at many indicators here on our Dow. So, but now let's take also a look at the S&P. On the S&P, this is over here, we have an hourly chart, and over here, this is a 4-hour chart. So, but I wanted to show you how those kind of correlate depending on the time frames that you are looking at. I have a trend line. This is on the hourly here. You can see it hit numerous times, this trend line, and then also a trend line above. So I'll be watching to see this wedge pattern, if that really is going to form into a wedge pattern, and then we will have a breakout opportunity again on that 1-hour chart. The S&P did hit its all-time high on the futures at 58.30 this last week. But it didn't even come back up to retest that yet. So will it reverse and then continue a breakout above this wedge? So something I'll be watching for, definitely. Now over here we have, like I said, a 4-hour chart, and this is that same area of trend line here on the 4-hour, but then I have a channel here. So it just shows you that there's so many opportunities, whether you are going long or short, when you watch these patterns and watch your indicators. They are so critical. It doesn't depend. It's not just for one specific time frame. I've heard it said that you trade price, you don't trade time. So if you trade just using a 1-hour chart, then you follow those patterns. You certainly keep in mind what is happening on the longer time frame charts as far as trends, and what you're watching the same patterns, whether it's a day, a week, a month. You're always going to see a shooting star. You're going to see a head and shoulders and such. So anyway, just be aware of these things and make sure you watch all of your time frames. Okay, so this next week, it's the end of the quarter on Monday, September 30th. Now, the end of the quarter is not typically historically biased one way or the other, whether it closes long or short, what have you. But it is going to be probably some high volatility day, just because of the end of the quarter, balancing of positions, mutual funds and ETF traders, hedge funds and such. So they'll be repositioning some of their assets, maybe making their portfolios look good if they kind of hop on board the better performing stocks or whatnot. Anyway, so it will be an interesting day on Monday. Also, Federal Powell speaks on Monday, so we'll see what he comes out to say. And this is all about jobs this week. We have the ADP jobs reports come out. We have unemployment rate. We have non-farm payroll reports. So it's all about jobs. And then earnings this next week, we have, Carnival and Nike are expected. And both of those are expected to meet expectation or beat expectations, but we don't know. But if you are, like I said, an options trader, I like Nike. So just, keep that in mind if you are trading. And like I said, it's going to be another busy week, the beginning of another month. So as I always say, trade with traction, not distraction. Also, comment, support, or subscribe, like my channel if you would, please. I'm a new YouTuber. I've been a trader for many years, but I would really appreciate your comments. Let me know if there's some questions you have or specific markets you would like to look at, and I would certainly be able to answer those. And if not, I would direct you in the right place. So thank you so much for spending your time. Take good care.